Hey, what's up, guys? I'm going to be profiling my branded Buster Blader deck profile. This is one of the deck profiles I promised I'd bring to you guys once I get a new setup, which I do. And now let's just get right into it. The deck is really plain and simple. It's 2-card combos, and I'm not really going to waste any more time. Let's just get right into it. So for the monsters, we are playing 2 copies of Buster Blader original and the 1 Destruction Swordmaster. The original Buster Blader reads that it gains 500 attack and defense for each 500 attack for each dragon monster your opponent controls or is in their grave. Then this one's effect, the Destruction Swordmaster. This name becomes Buster Blader while it's on the field or in the grave. Basically, if a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can equip it to this card, and you can do that multiple times per turn as long as you have the spell and trap zone space. And then once per turn, this is not a hard once per turn, this is a soft once per turn. You can send one monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the grave, destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type as that monster sent to the grave. So that's it for the 3 Buster Bladers. For the main normal summon of the deck, we play 3 copies of Buster Whelp. This is just here. It can, when it's normal special summon, you can add 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, except Buster Whelp, the Destruction Swordsman. And you can only use one of the following effects of Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman per turn and only once a turn. You contribute it, special summon a Buster Blader from your hand or grave. Not really going to use that effect that much, but that one is a lot more common than the last one. If this card is in your grave and you control Buster Blader, you can discard 1 Destruction Sword card and special summon this card. Next, for the last Buster Blader monster in the main deck, the 1 Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. This card got banned for a reason. It's an infinite scythe lock, but thanks to Union Carrier still being banned, only Buster Blader can really abuse this right now. But yeah, if it's equipped to a Buster Blader monster, or equipped to any monster of that matter, your opponent can't use the extra deck. And normally, off its own effect, it can only equip to like the original 3 Buster Blader I just showed. But thanks to Buster Dragon's effect, it can equip to our fusion. So now onto the Despia package. We are, of course, playing 3 copies of Alibur. The Alibur is our other main normal summon of the deck. Yes, unfortunately, this deck does have 2 main normal summons, but hopefully most of the time you'll never have to do 2 main normal summons in the deck because you can't do that. But hopefully you won't open your 2 main normal summons. But it's just, if this card is no more special summon, you can add 1 Branded Spell or Trap from deck to your hand. And then if this card, if a fusion monster you control leaves the field because it was battled or by opponent's card effect, while this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card and then target that monster and negate its effects. But you can only use either or effect per turn. So if you get the Branded Spell or Trap Search, you don't get the effect negate. So it's... But more than likely, you're just going to be using it for that Branded Spell or Trap Search. Next, we play 1 copy of Tragedy. If this card is sent to the grave or banished by a card effect, you can add 1 Despia monster from your deck to your hand, except Despia and Tragedy. You can banish this card from your grave, then target 1 Branded Spell or Trap in your grave, set it to your field. You can only use 1 Despia and Tragedy effect per turn and only once that turn. This is like our 4th Alibur. We play Foolish Burial in the deck, and Foolish Burial, this... get Alibur, Branded Fusion. It's really awesome. Next, we play 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz. This is our main fusion material of the deck. We need it. We don't run 3 because off the first one we sent off the first Branded Fusion, we just come back to our deck. So it's basically like we're playing 3 copies of it. But it has a good super poly effect. You can just normal special summon it, discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 fusion monster, using monsters on both field. But more than likely, if you use that, that's just like, this is just going to be in the grind game. But trust me, this deck won't need grind game. Because Kaijus aren't really that prevalent right now. Raw Sphere modes aren't really that prevalent right now. Not even Dark Ruler. Maybe Forbidden Droplet. But you won't need a grind game in this deck. I played this in a tournament a couple months ago, back when Despia was still happening and stuff. But, yeah. I won that whole tournament, didn't lose a single match. Nowadays, it would probably go to like game 3, but this deck is still really, really strong. And now that Terillaments is gone, basically, and Sprite lost Sprite Elf, Despia might end up seeing a resurgence, and I really like that because I enjoyed the Despian archetype. So now we are playing the 1 copy of Albion the Shrouded Dragon. This card's name becomes Fallen of Albaz while on the field or in the grave. So it's kind of like the 3rd one, even though we won't ever use that effect. It basically, if we send a Fallen, Albaz, or Branded Spell or Trap from our hand or deck to the grave, we get one of the following effects. So if we send it from the hand, we special summon this card, so it becomes a 2500 beat stick on the field. Or if we send it from our deck, we get to place this at the bottom of the deck and draw a card. So it's basically a free upstart goblin that dumps. But I mostly use this for the draw effect to dump a branded opening to my grave so it can have destruction protection for my fusion monsters. Now for the 5th and 6th Aliber, this is of course Spriggan's Kit. This card is just really good. It unbricks our hand. It says if a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material on your field or in your grave, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add to your hand 1 branded spell or trap that is banished or in your deck or grave. Then place 1 card from your hand of the towards the bottom of the deck, and then you can only use each effect of Spriggan's Kit once per turn. So this is really good because it basically just unclogs our hands and unbricks our hands, and it's just really good to get you a branded fusion to get your play started. So 2 copies of Spriggan's Kit. So that's it for like the main archetype monsters. The next 6 monsters we're playing are just hand traps. It can be any choice of hand traps you want to. It could be even board breakers if you want to, but I go hand traps because I want to go first with this deck, and I do not need board breakers in this deck. Of course, that's not always the case. You're not always going to be able to go first, but I like to prioritize going first. I'm never going to prioritize going second because hand traps are still good going second too anyways, but yeah, these can be any 6 hand traps you want to. And if you want to change some of the ratios around that I showed, be my guest. You guys can play the deck however you want it, just like how I can play the deck however I want it. So now we are playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is just really good. Everyone knows what Ash Blossom does. Just, if it basically says no to your opponent cannot search the deck, cannot special summon the deck, cannot send from the deck to the grave. So Ash Blossom is really good now. Especially since Terulaments is banned, or not really banned, now that Terulaments is just dead. Most decks now are going to be, I feel like we're going to see a lot more diverse decks playing. Like, we might see, like I said, the resurgence of Despia, a Castira, that's really good, but Nibiru is going to be really good against that deck. Maybe Sword Soul, I don't know. But, yeah, I just really like Ash Blossom. It's just a really good hand trap. Good against most decks, so I just tend to go with Ash Blossom. That's my hand trap of choice. Next, we are playing 3 copies of DD Crow. Mr. Crow. The Terulaments killer, basically. But, yeah, this is quick effect. You can discard this card to the grave, then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard, banish that target. I still play DD Crow because there's still a lot. I have some Eldritch players at my locals, and this deck is Eldritch is probably the one deck that this deck struggles against because of the just the floodgating, especially from graveyard, getting the 3500 beaters to the field. So Crow literally just says bye Eldritch, no more having fun, and then you're beating your opponent down with your Buster Bladers and your Albions. So it's just really good too. That's it for the main deck, or monsters, I should say. Now let's get on to the spells. For the spells, we play 3 copies of Branded Fusion. Fusion summon 1 fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material from your deck, using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate this card. You can only activate 1 Branded Fusion per turn. This is just the main spell of the deck. It basically, you make Lubellion, then you make Mirror Jade, and then if you went first on your next turn, which will be the third turn of the match, it will be, if you have this again, you could play this, make Albion, then use Albion's effect, make Albalinitus. That's mostly what I use it for. You don't have to. I know most pure branded decks don't tend to do that, but I just do that because it's a lot simpler for me. I'm not really good at combo decks, by the way, even though I am trying to learn combo decks so I can get better at the game. I'm good at, like, just stopping my opponent from playing the game. That's what I'm good at. We play 3 copies of Opening. Discard 1 card, then take 1 Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense position. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon fusion monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. If a fusion monster you control will be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from graveyard instead. So that's really good. Just opponent tries to activate Lightning Storm, Raigeki, Dark Hole. Just that will take the hit for it. Basically, it's like the Return of the Dragon Lords, but for fusion monsters, if that makes sense. For the final 2 Branded spells, we're playing 2 Branded in red. This is really good. If you have access to Guardian Chimera, this card becomes so much better. I don't, so I played Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, which is still good in my opinion. Just make your opponent burn for 600 every time they want to activate something. But yeah, that's basically all it's here for. It's just target one Despia monster or fallen Albaz in your grave. Add it to hand. You can apply the following effect. You can, so you don't have to fusion with this if you don't want to. You can just fusion someone level 8 or higher fusion monster from your hand, from your extra deck by banishing fusion chosen from your hand or field. But it cannot attack directly this turn. For the final 2 spells I am playing in the deck, I am of course playing 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Send 1 monster from your deck to the grave. You can activate this, dump your Tragedy. Tragedy will search your Alubra, the Jester of Despia. Normal summon your Alubra. Alubra adds Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion makes Lubellion. Lubellion makes Mirror Jade. If you want a simplified combo, that 1 card right there will do all that. As long as you don't get interrupted if you have something to discard in your hand. For the final spell, I'm of course playing 1 Call by the Grave. I don't want to get hand trapped. I need my Branded Fusion to go through. I do not want it to get stopped. So Call by says, you're not stopping my play. For the traps, we're just playing the Buster Blader traps with another 3 traps that are just really good. Play the 3 copies of Prologue. Prologue's really good. Summons your Buster Dragon from your extra deck, and then dumps your Destruction Sword card and a Buster Blader from your main deck. And the main Destruction Sword card you're going to be sending off this is, of course, the 2 copies of Destruction Sword Memories. You can banish this card from your grave, and you can fusion summon to make Buster Blader the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. And it also has a good on-field effect to where you can discard a Destruction Sword card to special summon a Buster Blader from your main deck, but we're really not going to be doing that. For the final 3 traps, I'm just going to be playing 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is just, it basically is our other 3 copies of Prologue. Because you want to see 2-card combo in your opening hand, and then you're just winning at that point. But after I show the main deck, I'll tell you all about the 2-card combos you could do. And if you guys want to, I'll upload a test hand and combo video so you guys can learn the deck. But if you don't want to see that, I don't have to make it for you guys if you don't want to see it. But if you do, please let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But let's get on to the extra deck real quick. So for the extra deck, we are of course just playing 2 copies of Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. It basically says Buster Blader plus 1 Dragon type monster must either be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card cannot attack directly. This card gains 1,000 attack and defense for each Dragon type monster your opponent controls or is in their grave. Change all Dragon type monsters your opponent controls to defense position. Also, Dragon type monsters your opponent controls cannot activate their effects. And if this card swings into a defense position monster, it does piercing battle damage. Very, very powerful fusion monster if you pair it off with your Buster Dragon, which you're going to be doing 100% of the time. For the Albaz fusions, I'll just go through them pretty quickly. The 1 Mirror Jade, the 1 copy of Lubellion, and the 2 copies of Albion. Yeah, 2 copies of Albion, the 1 copy of Lubellion, and the 1 copy of Mirror Jade. So these are your main Albaz fusions you're going to be using. Mirror Jade reads, Fallen Albaz plus 1 Fusion Synchro XD or Link monster. You can only control 1 Mirror Jade the Ice Blade Dragon. Once per turn, quick effect, you can send 1 fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz as from Chill. Then non-targeting, non-destruction, just straight up banish 1 monster your opponent controls. That's a really, really powerful effect. Also, this card cannot use the effect next turn. So if you activate it on your opponent's turn, when it comes to your turn, you can't use it. But it's still a really, really good effect. If this card is fusion summon, leaves the owner's field because of an opponent's card, you can show a monster your opponent controls during the end phase. Keep in mind, so if it gets banished, you can use this effect. If it gets destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can use this effect. If it gets destroyed by card effect and gets sent to the grave, you can use this effect. But if it gets bounced back to your extra deck, you do not get its effect. Lubellion says 1 dark monster plus Fallen of Albaz. If this card is fusion summon, you can discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except Lubellion, the Syrian Dragon, by shuffling fusion materials mentioned on it into the deck from your opponent, from your monsters on the field, grave, and or face-up banished cards. For the rest of this turn, this card cannot attack. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. You can only use this effect of Lubellion, the Syrian Dragon, once per turn. We're only going to be using Lubellion to go into Mirror Jade here, but he's the main reason why we go into Mirror Jade. The 2 copies of Albion is he requires Fallen of Albaz plus 1 light monster. If this card is fusion summoned, you can fusion summon 1 level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except Albion the Branded Dragon, by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, and or graveyard. During the end phase, if this card is in the grave because it was sent there this turn, you can add to your hand or set 1 Branded spell or trap directly from your deck. You can only use each effect of Albion the Branded Dragon once per turn. So the reason why I play 2 is because he's the main fusion monster I'm going to be sending off Mirror Jade's effect, and I still have the other one in my extra deck for my follow-up play to make him to go into Albulinitus. So that's it for the main Albaz fusion monsters, I guess. But next we are of course playing for the Despia fusion monsters. We are of course playing the 1 Masquerade, and I know I said for that was all the Albaz fusion monsters, but I forgot about that one, the Albulinitus, of course. But Masquerade the Blazing Dragon is while you control this fusion summon card, your opponent must pay 600 life points to activate card or effects. If your opponent controls a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XZ, or Link monster while this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can special summon this card by banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use the effect of Masquerade Dragon once per turn. So keep in mind, if it's on the field and you summoned it correctly, your opponent must pay 600. But when it leaves the field and comes back by its own effect, your opponent does not have to pay the 600. So always keep that in mind too. For Albulinitus, the Abyss Dragon, this card reads, it takes Fallen of Albaz plus 1+ Dragon monsters. That's really important because its effect is, cannot be used as fusion material, must be either fusion summoned or special summoned by sending the above cards from any monster zone to the grave. This card can attack monsters a number of times each battle phase up to the number of materials used for it. So for instance, if you may use this, fuse this using the Fallen of Albaz, and let's say you use it fusing 6 dragon monsters, this card can attack 6 times on monsters each battle phase. Okay, that's insane. That's a really, really good effect. But if this card leaves the field, says once per turn during the end phase, this card is in the grave because it was sent there this turn, you can add 1 polymerization normal spell or infusion normal spell. So it's just a really good way to, if this card does leave the field, you can just get another Branded Fusion to just keep plussing. You just want to keep plussing to your hand. You always want to have steam and gas with this deck. That's it for the fusion monsters. Now let's move on to the synchros. So for the first 2 synchros, I'm of course playing the 2 copies of Buster Dragon. I'm only playing 2 copies of Buster Dragon because, like I said, we're never really going to need a grind game with this deck because more than likely, like I said, if your opponent does not have board breaker cards, they're just going to scoop because they can't do anything. Because you're one-sided skill draining your opponent. They can't activate, they can't summon from the extra deck. It's just, your opponent's just going to scoop. Your opponent's just going to scoop. This takes 1 tuner plus 1 non-tuner monsters. All monsters your opponent control become dragons. Once per turn, if you do not control a Buster Blader monster, you can target 1 Buster Blader in your grave. Special summon it. Once per opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target 1 Buster Blader monster you control. Equip it with 1 Destruction Sword monster from your graveyard. So this is really good because when we had the fusion to this field and him, use this effect, equip my Buster Blader fusion with the Dragon Buster. Destruction Sword from the grave. For the last synchro we're playing in the deck, we don't go into this that much, but of course the off chance that we do on our follow-up turn where we're not locked into fusion plays, it's of course the 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. You make this using your Buster Dragon and your Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. That's what you use it for. But yeah, it's just a good Omni negate, just a quick effect negate any card effect, and if this inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon a tuner from the grave. So that's pretty much all that's here for. For the links, I only play 4 links in the deck. This is just for my follow-up turn when I'm going to OTK my opponent, because what this deck tends to do is you go first, set up your board, your opponent's turn comes, you Buster Lock them, and they can't do anything. They just have to either scoop or in their turn, your follow-up turn, because you're no longer locked into fusion plays when it was your opponent's turn. So when it gets back to your turn, you can just link climb and just OTK your opponent. It's just really good. One Borrelsword Dragon. I was playing Access Code. I only have 1 copy of Access Code, but Access Code should be in place of this. But until I get another one, I just have Borrelsword in this deck. I have Access Code in my Blue Eyes deck, but yes, if you have Access Code, play him over Borrelsword Dragon. But this is still a good cheap alternative if you want to do that. Or if you want to do Appaloosa, you can do that too. The one Nightmare Unicorn. It's just a good way to spin stuff to the deck. That's all it's good for. Discard a card, shuffle a card, your opponent controls back to the deck. Protector Whelp. This is just requires 2 monsters. If it's linked summon, you can just send 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to the grave. Please special summon 1 Buster Blader monster from your hand. Also, really cool effect. Your Buster Blader Fusion cannot attack directly, but if your opponent controls no monsters, his effect is, if your opponent controls no monster, you can target 1 Buster Blader monster you control that did not declare an attack this turn, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. So it's just really, really good. It just basically makes it to where your Buster Blader Fusion did attack, even though it didn't, if that makes sense. And then finally, we're just playing 1 Linkuriboh. This is just good to get our Buster Whelp and Destruction Sword to our graveyard. It's a good battle phase monster. That's pretty much all it's here for. So that's going to be it for the deck profile, guys. This deck is, like I said, it's really fun to play. If you guys are looking for a fun competitive deck that can do really well at locals, I highly recommend this deck. Like I said, you can tweak the deck however you feel like to better suit your needs and the decks you face at locals. But for me, I built the deck the way I needed to build it because of how my locals is, and I maximized the cards I want to see. But real quick, the 2-card combos that you always want to see in your hand is, of course, you want to see your either Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman and your Branded Fusion, or you want to see your Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman with Branded Opening, or you want to see Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, the trap card with Branded Opening or Branded Fusion, or you want to see Alibur with your Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, or you want to see your Foolish Burial with your Prologue, or you want to see Alibur or your Foolish Burial with Trap Trick, or you want to see Opening with Prologue. It's just, you basically want to get access to both engines, and that's why I played multiple 2-card combos. But if you guys do want the more in-depth deck, like the more in-depth combos of it, then please let me know, and I'll be glad to show you all the test stands you guys want for it, what to play out of good hands, bad hands, anything like that. But this is coming into the end of the video. If you guys like the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think of my deck in the comments below. And the next profile I'll probably be doing is my Bystial Blue Eyes deck. I know Tyr's dead, but I'll probably show you 2 Blue Eyes deck profiles, the pure Blue Eyes deck and then the Bystial Blue Eyes deck. But yeah, that's going to be in the next video. But like I said in the intro tutorial to my YouTube channel, I'm trying to turn this into a full-time career. Because, you know, I just don't like having a boss breathing down my neck 24/7. So yeah, I really hope you guys will enjoy these videos, and I really do want to make a full-time career out of this. But you guys watching the Blue Eyes King, later.